The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Rube, I can't believe it. We're down to 9 days away from the single digits from the NFL draft.
Yeah, but still double digits to round 2.
Thanks for that. This is Eagle Eye, brought to you by Car Shop. Want certified used cars reconditioned like new? That's Car Shop, formerly Car Sense. With Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. I'm still excited about 9 days away. That's the start. Once we're in the draft, we're good to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where Arthur is charging the castle and he keeps sprinting toward it, and then in the next shot he's still far away from it.
Yeah.
Because it seems like we've been on the brink of getting to the draft for about 2 months now, and it just doesn't get here. But there's plenty to talk about and plenty to break down, and it's certainly going to be exciting once we see how these first 10 picks go, and just setting up for the Eagles pick. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's always exciting. It does. I think after a while we get tired of it. I'm sure some fans get tired of hearing about all the different scenarios, but it is fun. So we're going to go through some possible trades, right? Not necessarily the trade terms, but whether it makes sense for the Eagles to trade back up into maybe the top 10 or trade down out of the 12th pick. We'll take a look at some options. It's funny, every mock draft has them either going cornerback or receiver, but there are some other options, and we'll go through some of those. The Eagles won't be attending OTAs this year. We'll kind of break down what that means, and we'll get into some other stuff too. But let's start with some trades, because that's kind of been the hot talk. And there have been reports that the Eagles are interested in trading down, trading up. I think there's probably truth in both scenarios. I mean, we've talked so much about how Howie Roseman views the draft, and it's just all about value for him.
Yeah, and he loves the action. He loves the activity. I mean, there's some years that they don't pick a single player with the pick that they were originally assigned, because he's good at it. It's something he's really good at, is getting max value out of the assets that he starts out with. And there was one thing, it took him like 5 years, but he had like a 6th-round pick that became a 5, that became a 4, that became a 3. Like, he just keeps doing these trades because basically a 3 this year, like a 4 this year is worth, a 5 next year. So, you can keep getting value that way. I think he's good at that stuff, but I do think there's a pretty good likelihood they don't pick at 12. And, I know on the one hand, people are going to say, well, just find a pick and get the player there, but they don't know how these first 11 picks are going to go. And I definitely think there's some scenarios that makes sense to get out of 12 and more likely trade down, but I think a trade up is still possible.
You know what's interesting? I read that Dave Gettleman has never traded his pick, which is insane, but he's right in front of the Eagles. So I guess if the Eagles are sitting there at 12 and the Giants are on the clock, they don't have to worry about someone jumping them, right? Gettleman's not trading out.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what that says about Gettleman. I've never been a huge fan of his. I think your mind has to work a certain way to understand the value and the benefit, and how he works that way. I mean, that's something he's really good at. And, he can see the big picture of like, all right, I'm going to trade this pick, but then I'm going to flip flop that for this. And, it's kind of like playing chess, and, you're thinking a few moves ahead. And that's a really brand new metaphor. I know that no one's ever used that one before, but I don't think Gettleman really has that ability to do that. But yeah, that's true. I mean, I think picks 5 through 10 are going to be what really kind of sets the Eagles' course.
Well, 4 through 10.
4 through 10, yeah, 4 through 10. I was rounding up. I mean, we talked about this with Peter last week, and what the Falcons do really is going to, yeah, you're right, is going to set the course for everything that happens in the rest of the round.
And it's funny because all that matters for the Eagles, or really any team in that range, is what happens with the quarterbacks. The best case scenario for the Eagles is that, unless they secretly love one of these quarterbacks, which who knows, it could always be possible. But the best case scenario for them is that teams start taking quarterbacks and teams are willing to trade up to take quarterbacks. And you have 5 quarterbacks go in the first 11 picks, which is very possible.
Yeah.
If that happens, Eagles can sit there. I mean, I think that would set up a trade down scenario more than anything, because there would be so many good players that they could trade down and still get one of them. The problem is if quarterbacks don't go early, that could set up a trade up in some ways, because you got to get a player.
Right. That's true. I think a lot of it has to do with their evaluation of Caleb Farley, and if they consider him, what they think of his injury and how much that affects his value, and where they rank him with Surtain and JC Horn, because I really believe that, and a lot of it has to do with whether Howie is truly going to go best available player. And this kind of leads into our next topic, but whether he would be open to taking a Rashawn Slater if he starts dropping, or, somebody like that, a non-corner receiver. And he always talks about best available player, but their need at cornerback is so glaring that I don't know how you don't address it, that, if you have a chance to get one of those guys. And I still believe I think the trade down scenario is if they can't get, if Surtain and Horn and Waddle, and maybe Horn's not even in that group for them, but I feel like if Waddle's gone and Surtain is gone, they might get out of 12. I think that they might feel like the value at 12 without those guys just isn't there. Move down, get a pick, and still get, whether it's Newsome later, whether you get Farley a little later, the way Howie thinks, well, there's 9 players, that we kind of value evenly. And so we can move down and get a pick, get some more assets, and still get one of those 9 players at some position, or 7 players, however many it is. But I think if they have a shot at, if Howie's pretty confident, they can get Waddle, or get, if somebody drops, or get Surtain, I think they would stay at 12, or even, like you said, move up a pick or 2. But the problem is everybody in front of them wants corners too. So it might be a little more difficult, but I do think trade down scenarios would be there for him.
Yeah, I do too. The question is who's trading up. I mean, and what are they trading up for? If the quarterbacks are gone, you're not getting as much for a trade up. It's like, so you saw the 49ers move up that big jump from 12 to 3. They had to give up a ton. They're going up to get a quarterback. The Eagles didn't get as much from the Dolphins because that trade up isn't for a quarterback. That's just kind of the way values are placed on things.
Yeah, and they just, they just have to hope somebody values someone more than they do, and because otherwise, I mean, every team sees these guys differently. There might be some team out there that's dying to get, Rashawn Slater or whoever it is, and you just don't know. And we all get into this thing where we're reading all the mock drafts and expert evaluations and analysis, but teams don't necessarily agree with that. So that's why there's always surprises, and guys drop and we say drop, but they're not really dropping. They were never really there to begin with. But that's what makes it interesting. There's such an unknown for something that is broken down so much and really it starts a year ago. And it goes through the Senior Bowl and the pro days and usually the combine, and every single aspect of the draft is broken down. Nobody knows what the hell's going to happen. Nobody.
Yeah. It's funny. There's so much proprietary information, and these teams are so paranoid. I was listening to an interview with Daniel Jeremiah recently, and he was talking about his process, and he says, his mock drafts, he kind of sees it like a necessary evil. And he does that, not his evaluation, but like kind of what he thinks or what he's heard a little bit. And he said, at least, a few times a year, he'll have someone from a team call him like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're putting our information out there. It's like, I was just guessing. Like, I didn't know that. But it's the whole process is fascinating because really, I mean, there are the circles are small in NFL teams who actually know what they're doing. Like, a position coach, they're going to be asked for their opinion on players, but they have no idea. I mean, there are surprises every year from inside teams when guys get picked. I mean, there were surprises last year when the Eagles took Jalen Hurts. I mean, because the circle is so small and it's gotten to the point where teams are just so paranoid that, in the Eagles, who is it? It's, we know Howie Roseman obviously knows, the owner knows, Jeff Lurie knows. You'd guess the head coach knows, and maybe Andy Weidel. That's 4 people, and I'd be shocked if it's bigger than that.
Yeah, I would agree. I remember running into a very highly regarded, highly ranked assistant coach in the cafeteria. It must have been 2 years ago, back when we were allowed in there during the draft. And, it was a little while before the Eagles picked, and he was just saying how much he was hoping. I think it was before they picked in the second round, but he was just saying how much he hoped they were getting. They're going to draft somebody in his. And he had no idea. He's like, I'm like you guys. I don't know who we're taking.
It's true. It's like it really is a small circle. The position coaches have no idea.
No idea. Yeah, no idea. And you have to do that. I mean, you just really have to, And I think that's one thing in the Athletic article. It was kind of portrayed as unusual that there were these Zoom meetings last year before the draft. I think it was with just 3 or 4 at the top, but that's normal. Every team does that. That's not unusual to have. You're not going to have 50 people who are involved in the process on a Zoom call to make the final call about a pick. You're going to have Howie, Andy, Nick, and Jeff Lurie, and that's probably it. Maybe one other person. Maybe Doc, who walks up to the podium back when they did that. But it's an interesting process, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions. But I mean, I always thought that everybody was involved in that, because you see all these people in the war room and everything, but that final pick, it's just a few guys making it.
Yeah, and there's so much just wrong information that comes out because teams are so paranoid that they're happy to send people on these wild goose chases, which is, I get it. I think overall, I think there's too much paranoia in the NFL, but I get it though, because we're talking about major business, and if you hit or miss on a first round pick, it can really change your franchise. It really can. So especially when we're talking about, top 5, top 10 picks. So I get it. We'll see what happens with the Eagles. I firmly believe that trading up or down is in play. I don't think they're never a team to just sit there at 12 and be like, oh, we have the 12th pick now, we're gonna draft there. That's not the way they think.
Yeah, I'm leaning toward trading down, but like you said, I think either's possible. Howie is. Remember, there was one year where they didn't have a pick, like in the 3rd round, and Howie said he was going crazy. He said he went out to the practice fields and walked around like for half an hour because he couldn't stand it.
Yeah, that was a big get. That was like a round and a half without a pick.
Yeah. So he craves the action, and I think. For the most part, they play that stuff pretty well.
They do. All right, you kind of hinted at it, but it's like probably 95% of mock drafts, including the ones we've done, have the Eagles taking a cornerback or a receiver, and it's pretty obvious why. They're glaring needs, and it looks like the value lines up where they're going to pick. Right? It does. If it's Waddle or Surtain or Horn or whoever it is, it kind of looks like the value lines up. But I want to at least have people understand that there's a possibility they don't take a corner or a receiver. I think it's probably more likely they do. But let's go through some names. I jotted down a list of, what do I have here? 6 names of players I think could be in play.
How many offensive linemen?
3 of them. And it's
Darisaw, Slater, and Vera Tucker.
Yeah. I mean, because we're talking about a need that's kind of fallen under the radar. And I get that it might not be as pressing. Like they can probably field a team this year, right? They're going to have, right now you're looking at their offensive line. You go, all right, Andre Dillard or Jordan Mailata at left tackle, left guard, Isaac Samalu, center, Jason Kelsey, right guard, Brandon Brooks, right tackle, Lane Johnson. Pretty good. But injuries, aging players, and the potential that Jason Kelsey retires after this year. So,
and I still think we don't know exactly what the Eagles have in Jordan Mailata. It was encouraging. He considering everything, he played well, but And for that matter, we don't know what they have in Dillard. I'm not ready to say he can't play. I know some people say that. I think it's too soon. But I think the notion that they'll never draft a left tackle because they have Jordan Mailata, I think is mistaken. They're going to get the best. I mean, if they don't, I think he's pretty good. But, I think that if you can get a generational, like Trey Thomas type guy, you do it.
Yeah, and I didn't put Sewell in here because I kind of foresee him going earlier. But if he's there, that changes everything. But
Sure.
you look at these three guys: Slater, Darisaw, and Vera Tucker. All three of them offer some versatility, and that's something the Eagles value so much on the line. And we'll see where these guys end up. Maybe all three of them end up inside. It's possible, but especially with the guys,
Darisaw is pretty much at left tackle.
Yeah, but he can play inside, I think.
Yeah. I think of the guard tackles that the Eagles have drafted in the first round: Jermaine Mayberry, Anton Davis, Danny Watkins. Jermaine did end up making a Pro Bowl as a guard. I think you probably could. I mean, who knows? But I would think you could trade down a few spots for Vera Tucker, which I might have them do that in my mind.
I don't know about that. I mean, the Vikings are a team that could use O-line, and you don't know which one they value. I mean, they might go edge too, but like there's teams that are there that could. Vikings are at 14, so I mean, there's teams around there that would look at O-line, and if you're asking me about those three, I think Slater's the best of the bunch, but I don't know. Some people think Isaac Seumalo is too far in his career to move the center at some point. I don't.
No.
I think he can move the center. And if you get a stud guard, if you say you take Slater, you have this player who someone's going to get hurt on the line this year. It's going to happen. That's 17 games now, so it's going to happen. But even if it doesn't, you have next year, whether Brandon Brooks is still here or if Jason Kelsey's gone, you can move Seumalo, you can plug and play. It's an underrated need, and I think they addressed it early in this draft. I don't know if it'll be a first round, but I don't think it would shock us.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Slater's the best of the bunch, and I don't think he'll be there at 12. But if they stay at 12 and he's there, I don't see them not drafting him. Like you said,
he might be there at 12 though, because if you have five quarterbacks, you have Pitts, Chase. That's 7 players out of the first 11. There's not many other.
Right.
Sewell. So you're up to 8. Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. And I mean, that's kind of where being at number 12 is not necessarily a bad spot, because I mean, if there are 5 quarterbacks, that only leaves 7 players that you're going to get one of them. And, so there's 7 really good players, I think. But I'm intrigued by Slater. I mean, you're right. He could, if Kelsey retires, he could move right in at left guard. If you need a tackle, he could play either tackle spot. The versatility he gives you is so valuable. And they value that anyway. They always have. Center guard. I mean, that goes back to Andy. You got to be able to do center guard or guard tackle. It's one of the reasons Dillard was kind of an uncharacteristic pick. It's just he's not that. He's not that guy that you can. I mean, he's a left tackle or he's not playing.
I don't think they knew that when they drafted him. They obviously didn't know that because they tried to play him at right tackle.
Yeah. As soon as he talked about writing, doing a term paper with his left hand, they should have probably just scrapped that idea and re-signed Evan Mathis or something. But Slater, I don't think he would complain about writing a term paper with his wrong hand. So it's an intriguing name, but I think Vera Tucker is as well. I mean, he can do a lot of those same things. He can play guard. He can play tackle. I think he's probably a guard. I think he'll be a hell of a guard in this league, but he can play tackle too. So, I mean, the guy like Jack Driscoll, I mean, we thought he was exclusively a guard when they drafted him, and he held his own at tackle. I think it's another thing that goes into this whole equation is how they value guys like Driscoll and Nate Herbig do they just see them as kind of backup guys? Maybe get you through a game or two. I'm not sure they're dominating where you're going to say we're not going to draft a Rashawn Slater because we have Jack Driscoll. But I think they're functional pieces. But I don't think you change your draft plans because of those guys.
Yeah, I would hope not. I mean, and it's not anything against those guys. I thought Herbig played fine last year. I thought Driscoll showed some promise, but you can't pass up on a guy at 12 because you have an undrafted guy or what, a fifth round pick?
Fourth round pick. Come on, Dave.
Fourth round pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't matter to me. I think you have to.
Well, who do you think? Go through some of the other names you have on there.
Yeah, the other three are defensive players. Michael Parsons, and we've talked about him before. Some legitimate questions about how the Eagles value that position going forward. The franchise hasn't valued linebacker as much, but there's a new coaching staff, and if there's ever a time to value the linebackers, probably now. But you also look at it's funny. Linebackers not as pressing a need as it once was, at least not short term. You have Eric Wilson, you have Alex Singleton, even TJ Edwards as an early down run stuffer is pretty good. I think he's fine.
Yeah, I think he's okay. I think he's kind of limited, but he'll yeah.
Early down run stuffer. Yeah, he's limited, but that's what he is, but you can get by with that.
Yeah, well, obviously signing Wilson really changed that whole position where, now you have at least two functional guys who can, who are versatile and can play in different downs, and you have some options there. I like Singleton. I think he's one of the few guys, and he's not that young, and he's 27, 28. So he's not like he's a kid. He's new in this league. He was like the only younger player who kind of really played over expectations last year.
Got better. Maybe the only one on the roster, and they still wanted to play Nate Gary until he got hurt. Alex never would have played. But it was like the Greg Ward thing. Get this guy on the roster, get him going. But I think it. But I don't think that would preclude them from taking one. I don't think they will. But it's not a huge need at this point. I mean, they're okay at linebacker for now, for this year. I mean, but then again, Eric Wilson 1-year deal, Alex Singleton restricted free agent next year. So at some point you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
The other two I have are edge rushers, and the thought here is that for a long time we've heard there won't be an edge rusher where the value lines up at 12, and maybe that's the case. Maybe these are more trade down targets, but edge rushers tend to go earlier than people think. I mean, that's kind of a trend we've seen over the last few years. So these two guys are interesting names. Jalen Phillips from Miami and Kwity Paye from Michigan. I didn't put Azeez Ojulari on there because to me, he's more of a 34 backer, but maybe he can. I don't know how they value him or what their evaluation of him is, but I think Phillips or Paye, I don't think it's a stretch.
What's your level of concern with Phillips' concussions?
I don't know if I can have that's something they have to figure out, but just the player, there's so much buzz around him.
Oh yeah.
And the ceiling on him, super high ceiling. And that's intriguing to have a super high ceiling guy at a position where at least you have your starters. And that's not a popular thing to say because he might take a year or two, but there's a certain boom bust to him, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I know you like Kwity Paye a lot. The sack numbers he's one of those guys where the sack numbers weren't really there, but he kind of projects he should be an effective player. Do the sack numbers concern you?
No. I mean, sacks you would love to have sacks, and his numbers weren't awful, were they?
Pull
them up.
I think he had 12 sacks in his career.
Yeah.
11 or 12. So, yeah.
He had 2 in 4 games last year. He had 6.5 in 12 games the year before. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Like the
No, I'm just
fact
asking. I think he's pretty good.
yeah, that's not the reason I wouldn't draft him. I don't know if he has the explosive traits that a Jalen Phillips has. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if the ceiling on a guy like Phillips is probably higher.
Those concussions scare me. I just, when you hear multiple concussions, and I don't know, there's different grades and there's different severities, and I'd have to be really sure, that he's okay. I mean, it sounds awful. That's the reality of it, though.
I mean it's an investment. It's sometimes you can't look at this. You have to kind of look at it black and white at times and just say, we're putting a lot into drafting this player. We need him to give us X and X. And if he can't do that because he's hurt, and it's not worth it.
Hope is not a strategy.
Where have I heard that before? Of those 6 players, who do you think is most likely?
Well, I would say Slater. I don't think. I think there's a chance he'll be there at 12. I do. I don't think it's a lock, but I would say Slater, because I think if he's there, they're taking him.
I'm with you on Slater, because I think it would have to be someone good enough for them to overlook positions they really value where there's a ton of need and where there will be good players available, we think. So in order to overlook all that, you'd have to have someone who you have clearly above on your draft board. And I don't know what their draft board looks like. Believe it or not, Howie hasn't let me see it yet, but I'd imagine Slater. Yeah, I'd imagine Slater's pretty high up there.
Yeah, I would think so. And we'll see how that plays out. Beer, wings, sports. Hey, PJ Wellahans is the place to get all three, all your favorite stuff. Local sports fans gather together to catch all the action at your neighborhood PJs. Visit pjspub.com to find a location nearest you.
Can I finally talk about our first PJs read?
If it's important to you.
It is, because it was our first PJs read, and we couldn't make fun of it then because it was like their first time on the show, but Rube read it as PJ Wulahans, like he was a Louisiana Bayou man, and it was great.
Well, I've got a little Bayou in me.
It was like the Water Boy, PJ Wulahans, but I waited a few weeks before I brought it up.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Yeah. I have nothing. Hey, sometimes words can be hard to say.
They can. And people don't realize, like, when we're talking for an hour straight, we're going to say stupid stuff, and people will point it out.
The worst is when you're live and, you're doing like a live stand-up or a live hit, or you're on some live show, and all of a sudden a word just comes out wrong. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I've been talking my whole life, and you think you can pronounce like the simplest word, but all of a sudden, like a word, like you just sit there and a word, like it just doesn't come out. And it's like, I don't know why that is. Maybe I'm just
sometimes I'll be like searching for a word and I know it's coming up, and I start like speaking slower because I'm like, I got to get this word, and then I don't have it. Yeah, that's the way it works sometimes.
Or if there's a word that you've said a million times correctly and all of a sudden you just can't pronounce it.
Yeah.
That, proclivity, I don't know, whatever. It's just like you're sitting there, provility.
Yeah, Chuck Knobloch can't make the throw, right? You just can't do it.
Yeah, we've all got a little Chuck Knobloch in us.
OTAs, interesting kind of turn of events the last few weeks. The NFL basically said, yeah, we're going forward with in-person workouts. And the NFLPA said, oh, no, we're not. The Eagles released a statement through the Players Association saying none of their players would go to in-person voluntary workouts, which means OTAs. It means we won't have OTAs this year. Selfishly, that kind of sucks for us because we really like covering them, and it gives us something to cover in the spring. But I think there are important reasons there are OTAs. I mean, I know they're voluntary, but it was always kind of like frowned upon if players didn't go, and teams always boast about their attendance at OTAs. So I get why there's been some pushback, especially if you're like, this isn't necessary. We're putting our health at risk to do it. And I saw a lot of comments like, the Eagles are soft. I mean, they're one of 19 teams that have completely or partially said, we're not going.
Yeah, the funny thing to me is how many players talked last year about how much they missed OTAs, and like how many players were like, yeah, we didn't have OTAs. That really set me back. And now they're like voluntarily saying, well, I'm not going to OTAs. So that's kind of a funny deal about it. I mean, I appreciate that they're sticking together as a team. I'm not a infectious disease expert. I can't imagine. I mean, everyone, the Eagles got through the season. They had a couple guys on the COVID list. We still don't know. A couple of them got it before the season. I mean, being outside, it just seems very safe practicing. Non-contact practices. I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I don't really see the risk. Maybe there's more of a risk in traveling. I don't know what percentage of the team is vaccinated. I understand it. But it's just funny to me how so many of the guys were like, well, I didn't have OTAs, so that really set me back. Now they're like, well, you can have OTAs now. I was like, well, I don't want them. So that's kind of a weird deal. But I do think I was surprised at the quality of football last year without the offseason program. I thought it was high. I thought the game was going to look different, without all that. And even training camps were curtailed. There were no preseason games. I mean, there was a lot into it. So if you're the PA, and I think this started like right when the season ended, they were like, the season went a lot better than anybody anticipated, considering the lack of spring activities and summer activities. So from a health standpoint, I mean, we've seen guys get hurt also at OTAs, and it can't happen. Gosh, was it Indy Kalu? He tore his ACL in a spring workout. I think Carell Buckholder one year.
Paul Warlow.
Who was it?
Paul Warlow, linebacker.
Paul Warlow, yeah, in the bubble, right?
I don't think he ever played again.
Yeah, I think you're right. He was a good dude, man. I like that guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are some risks. I understand it. I do think it's good that the team is doing it as a team, and it's not kind of fractured. These guys are going to show up because they might have a bonus and these guys aren't. Do it as a team. Don't do it as a team.
Well, the Eagles are lucky because I looked through some of their contracts, and if they have bonuses, there aren't any like major ones. Some teams, that's an issue. I mean, look, if I have a $500,000 workout bonus, guess what? I'm showing up by myself. I'll be out in the field catching passes from the trainer if you need to. I'm getting that $500,000, or I'm finding a way for them to figure out how I get it. It's interesting. You're right. I think the way some players are looking at it is, yeah, we didn't have them last year. The level of play was fine. And I had to sacrifice, if you're a player, I had to sacrifice a lot during the season to stay safe and to show up to work. Like I had to sacrifice my life basically and kind of live in a bubble that wasn't a bubble, right? Like, and they're probably looking at it like, is that worth it to me for voluntary practice? They're voluntary, and they've always been, quote unquote voluntary, because you're expected to be there. You just are. You're expected to be there as a player, especially a young player. Now, if you're Fletcher Cox and you want to take a couple of days off, no one's you're not going to get cut. But if you're, a fringe player who's expected to be there, you better be there. That's kind of unwritten. And the interesting thing about this, to me, again, another interesting thing is that really, the Players Association and each team's leadership is really run by the older players who generally won't be as affected by this as the younger players who are going to miss it. And this statement is speaking for players who aren't on the team yet, by the way.
Right.
Because they're going to have a rookie class. Yeah.
And there used to be, actual like rookie camp, which had a lot of value. It's from a football standpoint, it's not ideal, but I can see where they're coming from. But yeah, I'm like you. I enjoy it. It's our first time. I mean, it's our first time seeing these guys. I remember walking over to one-on-one drills to see Jordan Mailata's first ever snap as a football player at any level, and just Stoutland just screaming at him, and you enjoy that. You see, you don't always get a fair. I mean, there's no pads there. It's not really football. It's like they say, meetings on the field, really. But I enjoy watching it, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future when COVID calms down. If these are going to go by the wayside, or if it's something that the league and the union are going to, have to figure out.
Yeah. Part of the Eagles statement also said, like, we're going to hold each other accountable. And that's an important part of this. Yeah. The reason I think we didn't see a drop off in play was that for the most part, guys did what they were supposed to on their own last year.
Right.
And that kind of falls on leadership. Like, if a guy shows up at training camp out of shape, you better ream him out, and we've heard like Jalen Hurts is going to have some of the receivers down to Texas to throw with him. So that work's important. I did come up with a list of some players who I think will be hurt by the lack of OTAs. I just wanted to kind of run through them and see what you think, if you agree with these. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, I mean, this is probably his last chance. He's not a lock to make the roster. He has a new coaching staff. You'd think he wants every opportunity to get in front of them and show him he can play.
Yeah, on the flip side, he's always looked great in OTAs, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, but this coaching staff doesn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
And I'll run through them quick. Hakeem Butler, obviously still making the transition from receiver to tight end, still on the roster. Andre Dillard coming back from the injury.
Yeah.
If Jordan Mailata has taken over that spot, Dillard's going to want every opportunity to win it back. Kayvon Wallace and Andrew Adams, the two safeties, one a free agent, one a second-year player. Rodney McLeod's out right now. We don't know if he'll back to training camp or their opening game, but while he's out, someone has to take those reps next to Anthony Harris. It would have been one of those two guys, so they're going to miss that. Davion Taylor, any football experience he gets is worth it. Same with Brett Toth, the offensive tackle. Stout loves him. He's a project, so any more opportunity for him. And Jannard Avery, who we've heard is switching from end to linebacker, kind of a last-ditch effort to get something out of him.
You get something out of that fourth-round pick.
Yeah, you'd like to
I'll
see
give you
field.
one. I'll give you one more name. As an older guy, a little older guy, Miles Sanders has never had OTAs because he was hurt his rookie year, and they didn't have him last year. He's never really had that work, and it'll be interesting to see if Miles can take that next step as a player this year. I mean, he had the 3 really long runs last year, which was exciting, but I don't think he had a great year when he was healthy. It was a weird year. Dropped a lot of passes. His receiving numbers were down. So I thought this was going to be a valuable time for him as well, especially with Jalen and trying to get on the same page, because he and Carson were not on the same page as far as the passing game went.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I'll add him to the list.
Sounds good.
So we haven't talked about this, so I hope we don't come up with the same ones, but we decided to each pick one player.
Trust me, I guarantee we did not.
Okay, good. So we each decided to pick or choose one Eagles draft pick that didn't work out, that we were bullish on. We thought they got something here. And then the reverse of that, a pick that we were really skeptical of that ended up working out. So let's start with you, Rube. A pick that didn't work out that you were bullish on.
All right. And the way I did this was I picked guys who were drafted before you were born to make sure we didn't pick the same. My guy that didn't work out, in 1990, the Eagles took 3 wide receivers.
I was born, by the way, in 1990.
I know, but you weren't
out there.
You probably weren't following the Eagles at that point. Calvin Williams in the 5th round, who wound up having a really nice career, and worked at Purdue with Leroy Keys, who just passed away this past week, which I did not know. Calvin played at Purdue, so did Leroy, for a former first-round pick of the Eagles. But Calvin in the 5th round, Fred Barnett in the 3rd round. But the second round pick was a guy named Mike Bellamy. He was the top receiver that they took that year from Illinois. And I had seen him play, and he was just fast and smooth, good hands. Production was there. It was a reason he was the top quarterback out of that group. Obviously, Fred and Calvin had long, productive careers. Fred Barnett had 2,000-yard seasons and made a Pro Bowl. Mike Bellamy never caught a pass. Never caught a pass in the NFL. Ended up in Canada. I'm not sure he caught a pass in Canada. And, you can't – everything on paper pointed to Mike Bellamy being the best of that group. He had the production. He played at a big-time school. He had all the – traits he graded out of him. Good, I don't know if they had pro days back then, but he was fast. But he didn't have, as a second round pick, he didn't have that hunger that the other guys had. And, he got to training camp thinking he had it made, and it just never happened for him. And that was the one guy, when I look back, I thought he was going to be a star. I thought he was not going to be good, but I thought he was going to be great. Watching him at Illinois was like, he was like watching just a stud, and it just never happened for him.
I went Jaquan
Jarrett.
Yeah, I really liked him. And, it was at the point where I hadn't really started covering the Eagles yet. I was like, that was the season, that off season was the lockout season. So that was my first time ever really trying to cover football. And I did okay. But he was a guy that, I had friends that went to Temple, so I knew about him. And I knew there was some buzz about him, and he was a heavy hitter. Like, you thought this guy's gonna be able to play at the next level, and it was just a wasted pick. He wasn't very good, and they cut him in 12?
Yeah, middle of his second season.
For a second round pick to get cut that quickly is shocking, and I really thought there was something there. Maybe. Look, he couldn't play now in this NFL, but I thought in that the league was still kind of making that shift where you could still have a really heavy hitting safety. And I thought it was unfair to kind of put the Doc stuff on him back then. He drew those comparisons, that was never going to happen. But I thought he'd at least be a functional player. And man, he wasn't. He was bad. And then to make matters worse, he went to the Jets, and he was okay for a little while.
He had one great game. He was AFC Defensive Player of the Week. He had 2 picks and forced a fumble. And they the only big plays he ever made. Yeah. But, he lasted 3 years with the Jets, mainly on special teams. Obviously, the expectations weren't the same because he wasn't their second round pick. But he did get vested, played 5 years. Believe he has a baby on the way. He posted on Facebook. I'm Facebook friends with him somehow.
Really?
Yeah.
He was always a nice guy. I appreciated that he would he would raise his hand, when something went wrong. Unlike some players on that team, that 2011 team, he raised his hand when something went wrong.
That's definitely true. No, he was a good kid, and I remember sitting in Derek Boyko's office with Big Red talking about Jaquan Jarrett and what went wrong, and he blamed himself for that for his career not getting off the ground. And it's just one of those things. It just
why was that?
He just thought he didn't. I can't even remember exactly, but I remember him just blaming himself. Maybe how he was used when he started playing him. Maybe he played him too soon. He wasn't ready. I don't remember the details. That was 10 years ago. 9 years ago. But yeah, it was weird because they cut him in the middle of the season. Yeah, usually you give the guy the second year.
Yeah. But, J-Jaw is entering. He could have cut him in the middle of last year. They didn't because he's a second round pick.
Yeah. But he was one of their best receivers.
That is not true.
Well, I guess not. What about the flip side?
Okay, I'll go first on this one. And this is a really recent one, but I was so skeptical, and I figured it won't matter because it's a 7th round pick. But Jordan Mailata, I don't think we talk about it enough, just how amazing it is that this guy's even played in an NFL game, let alone that he was good enough for us to think that he could be the future left tackle. But when they drafted him, I thought this is a cool story. I'm happy to write about it. He's never going to see a field. Never. That was my thought on it. And he seemed like a nice kid. We talked to him that first day, and he talked about made as little as peanuts. And I thought, great story. Stout has his project. Kid's never going to see the field. So for him to even step foot in the NFL, right there, that's success. And, but for him to actually play well is amazing to me. I'm blown away by it every time I see him play.
No, that's a good one. And, even beyond when he was drafted, I mean, he went on IR, I think both of his first couple of years with back issues, and we'd see him in the locker room, and, he was like in his second year and he had never come close to seeing the field. And, you'd go over and talk to him and you're like, this guy's never going to play. He couldn't even stay healthy. Now you're starting to think he's got like chronic back issues. It wasn't until his third year and, when he was forced into play, and all of a sudden it's like, this guy's been paying attention to Stout for the last 2.5 years. So yeah, that's a good one. I would agree. I did not see this coming.
When, so that first training camp, I did my, my series on him, the, surviving camp series. And I always pick like a kind of a fringe player. And I remember that year talking to him, I'd talk to him each week. And most guys, they're like, I tell them to come up with a goal for the next week. And most guys struggle because they're like, they've played football their whole lives. His was like, I need to do this one little technical thing different. And he's like, just learned it. He had learned it that day from Stout. And he's like, I got to implement this. He's like on the fly learning how to play football in the NFL. Amazing to me.
Yeah, it's a great story. I'll give you. I'm going to go back even farther than Mike Bellamy and give you Keith Jackson. I think I alluded to this the other day. I hated that pick so much, and the Eagles took. I mean, he was the 13th pick overall in '88 out of Oklahoma, tight end. He caught 65 passes his entire career. His senior year, and he played 4 years. His senior year, he caught 13 passes. And I'm thinking, well, you're taking this guy with the 13th pick. Now, there was a lot. I believe their quarterback was Jamel Holloway most of those years. They didn't have a high, it was Oklahoma. They ran the ball 80 times a game. What I didn't know was, Keith Jackson on those few catches, they didn't throw to him, first of all. They didn't throw to the tight end. He was blocking 90% of the time, and he was pretty good at it. But he also averaged like 25 yards per catch when he did get the ball. And he got in the end zone. He had like 20 touchdowns on those 65 career catches. So it really wasn't a case of him being – and back then, this is like you couldn't call up video on the internet of a guy because there was no internet. So, I hadn't really seen – maybe I saw one Oklahoma game, 1 or 2 games. I'm thinking they just drafted a guy number 13 overall who caught 13 passes his whole senior year. But as soon as he got in the NFL, as you know, he caught 81 passes his rookie year, which is still, it was the NFL rookie record, and it's still the tight end rookie record and still the Eagles rookie record. 81 catches as a rookie. That's more than he caught his entire college career. And he obviously was a 2-time All-Pro, a 3-time Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, 3 times here and once in Miami. I could not have been more wrong about Keith Jackson. I was laughing at that pick. I was like, these guys literally don't know what they're doing. They did. I didn't know what I was talking about.
That's the old saying, you draft projection, not production.
Exactly. It's so true. And, each one of these times that you're wrong, it's a good lesson. You kind of learn, a little
you
more.
You do, but I also think sometimes the lessons are hard to find in the draft because it's not like sometimes it's really tough to pinpoint why things went right or why things went wrong because you have to put it into the frame of the situation and the coaching and like
and who his quarterback is.
Yeah, did we miss on the evaluation or was it our coaching? Did we put him in a bad situation? Did he not fit what we did? Was the player's mental capacity to be in the NFL not there? There's so many different factors that I think it's wise for evaluators, and they do this. They look back and they try to take lessons, but sometimes I think it's probably really difficult to come to conclusions on it.
I'll never forget Buddy explaining why he took Eric Allen, who had played for a 1-9 Arizona State team, and he said he was watching film of the team they were playing, and he saw there was a guy ran like the other team had the ball like on the 6-yard line, and a guy started running down the right sideline for like a 94-yard touchdown. And the last thing he saw in the film was Eric Allen just closing on the guy, and like they were down 48-6. And he said, "I want that guy on my team. That guy's still out there chasing a guy in a 94-yard run, down 48-6 in a 1-9 season." And he became a 7-time Pro Bowler. So there's different things. There's just so many. And I think the biggest thing is, how is a guy going to respond to having all this money? How's he going to respond? We're going to give him $9 million. How's he going to deal with that? How much does he love football? And I think that's why over the last 10 years, the interview part and talking to teammates and coaches and family members has become so much more prevalent than ever before, because you need to know what kind of person this is, not just what kind of player this is.
Yeah, that's why I draft guys from Miami, because they've been getting paid for 4 years. Or I'm joking.
They know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
They already have 401ks.
One of the last things, over-under numbers from PointsBet are out for the Eagles. The lowest over-under number of wins in the NFC East at 6.5. Cowboys 9.5. Washington at 8. Giants at 7. Eagles at 6.5. First reaction to that?
I think it's a little low. I know last year they were projected to win 10, right? And they won 4.5. But I think it's a little low. Because I think Jalen Hurts will. I think there's going to be just an overall better vibe around the team. I don't think the division's very good. Their schedule, their schedule's looks pretty manageable. You never really know exactly what you're going to face. I think though, if I had to pick now, I'd say 8 wins, go 8-9.
We have to recalibrate what wins mean.
Yeah, it's weird.
17-game season.
Yeah, but I do think 6.5 is low. I think that would be 6 wins would be a disappointing season. I think 7. This team has had, like the last quarter century, they've only had, I think, 1 instance of back-to-back losing seasons. It doesn't happen very often, maybe twice. But I don't think they're going to be very good. But I don't think they're going to be a 6-11 team.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough to. That's going to throw me off for at least a few years.
One thing that we forget, like Doug Peterson was awful last year, and he's kind of become like, he was terrible. I mean, he cost them games last year, and we can't lose sight of that. I don't think he was. I think a lot of things happened that were unfair to him, but he was not a good coach last year. And I think we don't know what kind of coach Nick Sirianni is, but I just think there's going to be an overall, better vibe around the team.
Yeah, you might. I mean, things obviously kind of unraveled last year, but there's so many unknowns with this team too. You have a rookie head coach, rookie defensive coordinator, guys learning their new schemes. You have a quarterback that I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. And they haven't gotten, I mean, they'll presumably get better in the draft, but they didn't do much in free agency, obviously. Are they better now than they were last year? You hope that, like, if you're them, you hope the O-line's healthier. That's a big deal. But I don't know if they're a better team.
I think if they're all healthy, they're better just by default. But yeah, I do think they'll win more than 4 games.
Okay.
I just think there was so much going on with Carson, with Doug. I just think it was a tough environment to win. And I think a lot of that's been removed for better, for worse, but I think it'll change the whole kind of vibe around the team.
Yeah, we'll see. I actually think 6.5 is probably a fair over under with all the unknowns, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them hit a slight over on that.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing, Jordan Matthews popped up yesterday.
Love this story.
Yeah, at Trey Lance's second pro day. He was catching passes from Trey Lance in North Dakota.
Jordan Matthews, who is unemployed at the moment, but looking for work. He's only 28. One of the stranger stories that we've kind of been around is his decline, his demise. The only player in NFL history to catch 200 or more passes his first 3 years and 50 or fewer his next 3 years. That took me a long time, Dave. I hope you appreciate that stat.
I do.
There's no easy way to do that. You need two separate Pro Football Reference stat head windows. You kind of go back and forth. But anyway, he got 225 passes his first 3 years. And, he was right up there with those other guys, Jarvis Landry, those other guys in that draft, who've gone on to become like really good players. But then he just kind of fell apart. As soon as he got traded to Buffalo, it went bad. He had injuries, got cut by the Patriots after like a week. He's been on San Francisco's practice squad like 6 different times. And I'm guessing that's what the connection is. The 49ers they kind of designed Trey Lance's pro day, his second pro day. So even though Jordan's not a 49er, he knows those plays, he knows the scheme, he's comfortable running those patterns, and would give Trey Lance the best possible look because, he speaks the same language as Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle Shanahan doing Jordan Matthews a favor, saying, look, there's going to be a bunch of coaches and scouts here. You come out, maybe somebody sees you run, sees you catch the ball and gets you into a camp. So, you're not going to be able to get guys who are under contract to do that, for, I assume, contractual and insurance reasons. So you got to get a guy who's unemployed, who better, if you're running that 49ers offense, than the guy who's been with the 49ers most of the last couple of years. So I'm guessing that's the connection. And also Jordan's very close to Carson. We know Trey Lance and Carson I don't know how close they are, but you're right.
We just did it. We made it to like an hour in. Now we got to start over.
We're talking about North Dakota State quarterbacks. It's hard not to mention him. But yeah, I think, maybe there's some connection there because we know that the two North Dakota State quarterbacks are close.
And now that you said it, Jordan tweeted out, I've now caught passes from 2 Bisons. And Carson responded, come on, Bisons, you're better than that.
Bison. Yeah, you don't go plural on Bison. Yeah. I mean, Bison is plural.
Yeah. What did the Buffalo say to his son when he went off to school?
I give up, Dave.
Bye, son. All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever
Don't
you
make
get
that joke.
Rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please click like and subscribe there as well. We will be back with you later in the week. We have a few more of these shows before the draft next Thursday night. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye. We'll talk to you soon.
Carson.